whatever I'm judging outside of myself, we can either turn away from that and judge it and just like demonize it, or see that as, wow, okay, that's like showing me something that I'm judging within myself. And the wisest thing is to move towards that and get curious. Like, doesn't mean you have to then go and like become that, but get curious, because that's an indication of your dark feminine, the shadow, like whatever you've exiled, whatever's been suppressed for so long, what you're seeing outside of you, is usually the gateway in.
Yo, lovers. Welcome to Sex, Love, and Everything in Between. We're the O'Neills. You're here with Meg and Jacob.
And this is the place we have really uncensored conversations about sex, intimacy, and relationships. We're super excited you're here. Enjoy this episode. Hi, my loves. Welcome back to Sex, Love, and Everything in Between. We have the beautiful Nadine Lee here with us today from Tantric Alchemy. Hey, Nadine.
Hi, nice to be here.
I am very excited for this conversation. I'm just excited to see where we weave and what unfolds together.
Yeah, me too.
I was trying to think before where I first came across your work, and I think Lola, who's a mutual friend of ours, I think she introduced me to your work like maybe 2 or 3 years ago. And I remember first coming onto your page and just like immediately feeling just like your fierceness. And we are going to have a deep conversation about the dark feminine. And I could feel that you embodied that in a way that I hadn't actually experienced before, you know, and I'm sure you witness this in the online space. A lot of people talk about things, but there's a difference between talking about something and being it, and like being the transmission. And I felt that so deeply when I got to navigate and connect with your work. Like I truly felt that you were the living embodiment of what you were bringing to the space. And since then I've loved, like I also love that you're not afraid to just speak very fiercely and have strong opinions. And I think that's so needed in the online space. And yeah, I'm just so fucking grateful for that. So that is where I first came across you. But I would love to hear in your words and for you to share with everyone listening. Share with us what you do, who you serve, and yeah, just give us a taste of the work you do in the world.
Yeah, well, thanks for that intro. And yeah, I feel the same with you as well. I feel it's like an Australian thing, like traveling the world. I meet a lot of, Americans or Europeans, and there's just this like ruthlessness I feel in the Australian culture that comes through, and I didn't realize it until I left Australia. So, yeah. So, yeah, I work with women predominantly. I work with men as well, but more women these days, and couples in the realms of the tantric arts specifically. So really helping women reconnect to their body, reconnect to the Eros, working with the archetypal embodiment. And a lot of that is working with the dark feminine, which is, the realms of the emotions, the emotional body, the physical body, the sexual body, the erotic body. So really reminding women of the power that dwells in these places that, are taboo, like according to society. And then really once we've activated this sexual energy within them and cleared out a lot of the emotional blocks, my deep passion is really helping the women that I work with to channel that into their creativity and into their dharma, like what they're here to actually create and birth. And that looks different, for every woman. So yeah, it's really a journey of purification, activating sexual energy, and then circulating and channeling the sexual energy. So that really is, in my opinion, the tantric path. So I'm just taking women on that journey.
And I love, I speak about the dark feminine a lot, and, a little on the podcast, but a lot in my work with women. But I would love to hear I'd love to hear to you, who is the dark feminine, or what is the dark feminine? And also what happens when a woman activates or meets or gives herself permission to bring that part of herself forth?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that comes up is like, you can't actually define the dark feminine. It's like, oh, let's look up the dictionary.
Put her in a box.
Yeah, it's like, it's exactly that. You can't put it in a box.
Mm-hmm.
But really, like, when I feel into the frequency of it, you know, we have like the spectrum, like the rainbow spectrum of archetypes or flavors of Shakti, of the feminine. So we have more of like the lighter shades of of the feminine of Shakti, which are, you could see as like the maiden, like the archetypes such as Lakshmi, Saraswati, Venus, like these more, you know, lover, priestess type archetypes. And then we have like on the other side of the spectrum, the darker shades, which, you know, you can see as in terms of archetypes, Kali, Lilith, Medusa, the femme fatale, like, so it's like, it's the parts of us I feel that are linked more with like, yeah, the sexuality, the taboo, the body, and like the underrealms. So when we work with dark feminine, I feel it's really working with our shadow and the parts of us that we have exiled, the parts of us that we learned were not acceptable. We're not, you know, that men don't like that part of the woman. You know, it's the classic Eve and Lilith split. It's like, you know, Adam is in the Garden of Eden and he chose Eve over Lilith. You know, Lilith was the one that, you know, she wanted to be on top. She's riding him. She knows what she wants. She's very assertive, and she got cast out of the Garden of Eden in favor of Eve, who's, you know, the submissive and just like the good wife and the good girl. So that's a huge imprint that I feel a lot of us have as women, is like we have to choose between the good girl and the wild girl. And we can't ever be both at the same time. It's like, as soon as we enter into, you know, maybe motherhood or wifehood, it's like, okay, bad girl's dead. Like, I can't be her anymore. Like, I now need to be a responsible, good wife, good girl. And I feel that's such a trap, because I see so many women, a lot of my women are women who have been in long-term marriages, done the whole, you know, long-term married, have children, and they're so deprived of this dark feminine because of this conditioning. They've like shut that part of themselves down and just feel like completely dead inside, and they want to reconnect to that. So that's really about merging those two. And I feel it has to be done before we enter into these, you know, rites of passages like motherhood and wifehood, like to really anchor her in before, because then she's not going anywhere. Because once you unleash her, she's not going to be silenced or pushed aside. So I feel when women come and they've like disconnected to her because of, you know, going through motherhood, marriage or whatever, they weren't actually connected to her in the first place. They hadn't solidified or integrated her yet properly. So it's like, she's come out. She comes out eventually. Like, she has to come through eventually in the path of the feminine in one way or another. So
even being like myself being pregnant right now, and, you know, I'm so fucking grateful for the work I've done over the last 5 or 6 years, because I can feel like, for me, when a woman connects to her dark feminine, she becomes, or she activates this like unfuckwithable part of her. And I really want to talk about dating with you in a moment, because I feel like I just want to hear your perspective on this, because I think before a woman activates or touches those parts of herself, she's really easily able to be manipulated. And that could be in dating, but if she's pregnant, if she's in the birth space, if she's in a mother, like, she's easily able to be manipulated and told what to do. And I've just found, like, on my pregnancy journey, this like even fiercer activation of my dark feminine, this part of me that's like, no, you will not project anything into this space. I will not, you know, I will not receive anything that I don't want to receive from this. And yeah, I feel that, how powerful that is, that part of us is when we step into these rites of passages, and how important this part of us is as a woman, full stop.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. I saw that recently in one of your posts, was like stating something about like you're not going to the medical system or something along these lines. And I just loved that. I was like, yes, like that's like such a powerful transmission of that dark feminine. And yeah, if we don't have like access to these darker, more primal, it's like the sex, it's the body, it's the soma. If we don't have a connection to that, we don't have a backbone, we don't have a spine, and we're just, yeah, and like the flailing fish in the wind, and just, that light, feminine, fluffy that just gets flown everywhere. And it's like, without that solid backbone, yeah, you're just going to fall for anything and just be, yeah, pulled in every which direction. And yeah, we can't have that, especially in these times, with the world just being as crazy as it is. Everyone needs more of this energy. It's like, stand up for what you, but like, what do you actually believe in? Like, not what is someone else telling you what you should do, or someone else, like everyone else's opinions and all the noise. It's like, no, what do you actually believe in, and how can you stand for that? And that's the dark feminine playing out.
Yes. And I think, you do such a beautiful job in your work with this, but I think sometimes in the space of online, some people can be reading about the feminine or learning about the feminine and have this understanding, this false understanding that it's just about being sweet and soft and surrendered, and then have this idea of like, oh, if I want to be fierce, I'm being too masculine, or I'm being too like, that's wrong. And it's like, no, like this is an integral part of the range of the feminine. Like it's incredibly fucking feminine to be in our fierceness, right? And to stand up for what we fucking believe in, and to bring these, to bring our voice through and that fierceness through.
Yeah, for sure. I feel that's, like for me, I went pretty, maybe you saw my work when it was at its extreme. Because I've been working more, bringing a bit more like of the softness, because I went a bit too far on that spectrum. And it's like fire, you're playing with fire, and I have a lot of fire, and I know I need to manage that and balance it out. So, but I feel a lot of women, when they do unleash like the dark feminine, if it's been suppressed for so long, it's going to come out in the extreme way, an extreme case, like the intensity and, for example, boundaries. If you've never set boundaries in your life and then you finally discover boundaries, you're probably going to go to the extreme and start to be like, there's like a force field around you. This was my experience with boundaries many years ago. It was just like I was saying no more than I was saying yes, because I'd never said no in my life. So, well, I had, but it was not as common. And so when extreme boundaries, and then it balances out. And it's the same with like speaking your truth. And it can come across like really intense and fiery. And then there can be like an aggressive tone to it. And I've had phases of that. And, sometimes it's needed, but like sometimes it's a bit too much aggression, and then it will like balance out into assertiveness. So it's like speaking truth, but like with a softer tone. And there's no right or wrong where you're at on that spectrum, because like if you need to access her, you need to go into the extreme case scenario in order to then come back into harmony, into balance.
And I love that you brought that through of like you being in that darker, having that phase and then coming out and bringing in more of that softness. And I think that just speaks so beautifully to the feminine as well. It is range. It is our ability to like, dance in that full range and that full spectrum of it all.
Yes. Yeah. It's beautiful.
I saw you did a post recently, or maybe in the last month or so, and it was around, and I really want to speak about the dark feminine in dating, or a woman that's activated her dark feminine and how that shifts how she shows up in dating and how she shows up with men. Because I love this fucking post you did. You did it about like, it said something like, when a man kind of ghosts you and then he comes back in after a while and he writes like, hey, how you doing? And like, or whatever it was. And like, a woman in a maiden energy would be like, oh my God, he's back. Yes. Oh my God, I'm amazing. Let's catch up, all the things. And a woman who's like activated that dark feminine would be like, don't fuck with me. Right. I'm not going to give energy to that. So yeah, I'd love you to just like speak a little more to that, to the importance of not in the importance, but how that shifts when a woman moves from maybe that maiden energy in the world of dating to activating more of that darker feminine qualities.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest shifts is when you're in that maiden, a more lighter tone of the feminine, you are waiting to be chosen by a man. And you think that like your power lies in once you're chosen, once you get in a relationship, then you'll be in your power and then you'll be, saved from your misery and life will be so much better once the man chooses you. Whereas when you've like kind of moved through that rite of passage and shifted more into the darker feminine, you know that you choose the male equally. And it's not like you're sitting at a date waiting, like it's like this energetic of proving yourself to the man to like pick me, like I'm going to be a good partner for you. It's like, no, I need to discern who you are and like if you're good enough for me. And so there's this like shift in that. And with that comes not tolerating bullshit and not tolerating breadcrumbs, So the maiden, I feel, that more naive, lighter feminine really just lacks a lot of self-worth and self-love and hasn't resolved her daddy issues. And so she'll just accept the breadcrumbs. So yeah, when a man ghosts you, like that example is like ghosts you and then reaches out a few weeks later and is like, hey, how are you? Want to catch up? A maiden would just jump at that, be like, oh my God, yes, he's giving me attention. Whereas, the dark femme is just like I wouldn't even respond to that. I'd just be like, I'd laugh at that and then just, move on with my day because it's like, I'm not going to accept breadcrumbs, like it's laughable. So it's the shift in choosing, you choose the person as well as it's like a two-way street and the self-worth, I feel, and self-love has risen and less tolerance for bullshit is really the, the essence of it. And yeah.
I love that. I've so felt that in my own journey, not in dating, because, all of my work in, descending into the depth of my feminine has been whilst in partnership, but just in like business and in all of life, just like the discernment I now have. Right. And it's still, I still have the ability to be soft and, kind with people, but the discernment of, hey, I'm not going to tolerate that. I often say this when a woman taps into her dark feminine, her ability to like taste bullshit, like to pick up on bullshit anywhere is just like insane. And I think that is an incredible quality that we as women have. And then I think it's one thing to like feel that. I think a lot of women feel the bullshit, but not all women act on it. Like set that boundary or put down the phone and don't act on and go, okay, that is bullshit. I can see through that. I'm not going to message back. Do you see that? Do you see that as well?
Yeah. And I think a lot of the time there's this confusion around, especially in like a lot of these polarity spaces or whatever, is, like you said, bringing through that truth, like that fierce, like seeing through the bullshit is seen as like masculine or like, oh, don't emasculate him. And yeah, you can emasculate with that energy, but it's not about, I think that's where, doing your inner work around healing your relationship with the masculine. So you're not just kind of, emasculating men. It's more calling them forth in a way. There's like an art to it, and it's speaking the truth. But I think, again, it's not with that aggression. It's with that assertiveness. And like, I see who you truly are. I see you're acting like an idiot. Like, I'm going to call you forward to rise into your king. And honestly, I feel men want this. Like, the boy part of the man will want that, like, maiden that'll just follow him around and just pander to his ego. He'll want that at the start, but then he's not going to respect that girl. Like, eventually he'll leave for, you see this so much, like the guys that stay with those sort of girls for like, years, they never marry them, and then they leave them for like a dark feminine kind of archetype and marry them within a month. And it's like, it's because of that. It's because of like a man, and men especially now who are doing a lot of its work, who are really wanting to be called forth into their highest, like they know they need a powerful woman who is going to call them forth and not like settle for their bullshit and enable them in their bullshit. There are a lot of guys who do want that, like they're not wanting to grow, and that's fine. But I feel, really like powerful men want a woman to, who has a backbone, and who can call him higher.
Yes.
And that's the dark feminine, integrated dark feminine. It's not the maiden that's just going to like let him get away with his boyish tendencies for the rest of his life.
Yes. My love, if you are a woman that deeply desires to be claimed, cherished, chosen, ravished in partnership, whether you are currently in partnership or not, you are going to want to join me here on the Gold Coast in July. I am holding an in-person immersion for 3 entire days devoted to breathing down the walls of your heart, opening your body, liberating your expression, and becoming a woman able to be claimed, cherished, and chosen in partnership. I have not run an in-person event or a women-only event in a very long time, and given the baby I'm about to have, I will not for a while after this. So this is a very special opportunity to come and work with me in person with a very intimate amount of women. We are going to go deep. It is going to be an unforgettable 3 days. And if you are feeling the call to join us, come and apply ASAP. There is limited spaces. You're going to want to go to the link in the show notes or meg-o'neill.com/claimed-immersion, or just head to my Instagram. All the information is there. Can't wait to be with you. And I love that you said there's such an art to that, because I feel there's a difference between, emasculating a man or expressing through blame or like projection versus clearly and cleanly calling something out, or like clearly and cleanly bringing something you're really seeing, because that is an art. It's an art to nail that in relationship, but it's a gift. And I love that you said that in polarity spaces, because I've seen this fuck with so many of the women that come into my world, this idea that they think that is masculine and they think that's wrong. And so they bite their tongue and they hold it back, and they're first off doing themselves a disservice because they're holding truth in their body. They're doing their man a disservice because that is a gift, their feminine leadership, their oracle, that part of them. And then they're doing the relationship as an entity a disservice, because I truly believe the feminine is we're like the torch fucking bearers in a relationship. We're the ones that see where we can really, we hold the vision, we cast the vision for the relationship. We go, we want to go there. And I can see you need to be this man to take me there or take us there, or to go there with me. And again, that's an art, but it's such an important part of our gift as women in relationship.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's key to, because I've made that mistake in my earlier years, bringing, because I hadn't fully resolved a lot of my masculine wounding. And so I would, call them out, but in a really aggressive way. And it was emasculating. So I've had to, do the work on refining that dark feminine through healing the relationship with the masculine. And I feel now it's dialed in. It's a lot more assertive through that transition, and see that a lot, because it's but I'm just, because you see this more in I call it the baby Kali phase. It's what I went through and what a lot of us go through when you first unleash it. It's I just unleashed my Kali on him. No man can hold me because I'm so intense. And it's but there is a refinement to it, so it's not an excuse to just abuse men and emasculate your man. There's a nuance.
Totally. I write a lot of what I talk about is like being a full spectrum woman. And I often see that like a woman will then almost use that as an excuse to continue to play out these patterns in the relationship that, you know, are sabotaging the relationship or these wounds. So it's like, yeah, I'm in my Carly, but really you're just projecting and, you know, projecting and blaming and emasculating. And yeah, that there is a refinement to those transmissions when we bring them into the relationship. Yeah. I'd love to hear, you spoke about healing your relationship to the masculine or healing your inner masculine. I'd love to hear more about what that journey was like for you and how that's, shifted your relationship to men, or just even how you hold yourself as a woman in the world.
Yeah, I mean, you know, mine was pretty layered. You know, I had a lot of, not a lot, but I experienced sexual abuse. So that was like one of my first sexual imprints. So unraveling that has been a journey. And that was part of writing my book, actually, was like the final piece of like fully liberating that. So working with, boundaries and feeling safe, and also the confusion that came around that, you know, around experiencing like boundaries being crossed, but also pleasure at the same time, and like the guilt and shame around that whole scenario. So that was like a journey, and that's been a full on journey. That's actually informed a lot of my work and inspired a lot of my work, you know, me healing myself and then doing the same with other women. So that was a core piece. And then the father wound, you know, my biggest thing was working with what my father couldn't provide, which was the emotional safety and emotional kind of providership. You know, he was a good financial provider, but emotionally and even physically, he was often absent. So for me, and what I teach a lot of women, is really cultivating that inner father or inner masculine, working on the qualities that, you know, your father lacked. So for me, my core piece around my inner masculine was like mindfulness and really going into like meditation spaces. That was a huge part of my inner masculine journey, working with stillness, like stilling the mind, being so present, because I didn't experience that level of presence from my own father. So what I wanted, or was always grasping for in men, was that what my father couldn't provide for me. So I started to take matters into my own hands and, you know, provide that for myself first. Because if we haven't provided what was missing, then we're always just going to be, you know, looking out to men to be daddy and give what daddy couldn't provide to us. So that was a huge piece. It's like, oh, I actually have to give myself what I'm looking for. And then once I started to cultivate that within myself, then I only attract, you know, men who do have that quality. So I've noticed that like the qualities that I integrate and embody from my own inner masculine then show up in the outer. It's just how it works, really. Yeah.
Love that. Got to be our own daddy first.
Yeah, the inner daddy is such a powerful archetype. I love
and I guess that's different for each woman, right? I love that you specifically just shared around like what you didn't quite receive from your own father, and, you know, offering yourself that. So I guess that's so specific for each woman, right? She could contemplate, if she wanted to become her own daddy or be her own daddy, it would be contemplating what was my father not able to provide me that I really needed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that's where like that, you know, where the attack on the masculine, in my experience, that was what it was. It was if they weren't giving me what I, like before I did this work on myself, if they weren't showing up the way I wanted him to, then it was like the little girl just comes up, you know, and she just starts to attack. It's attacking the dad that never was there. So this is really the key, I feel, into integrating the dark feminine, so she can actually call him forth and not attack him and masculate. Yeah.
You spoke about your book just before, Sex Priestess.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to hear I would love to hear you talk about, again, maybe it's my same question around just, who is the dark goddess? Maybe the sex priestess can't be described, but tell us a little more about who is the sex priestess and what does that really represent?
Yeah, so I feel as though it's the tantric path that I'm kind of taking the reader through, and it's merging like sexuality, so the sex, and then the priestess. So it's like going from, the sex, the root chakra, all the way up to the priestess, like the crown chakra. So it's this journey of like the heroine's journey. I'm using my story as an example, like the journey of from sexual abuse and all the things to sexual liberation. And so yeah, I'm telling my story and then giving the reader like an opportunity to kind of go on their own journey through that. Like whatever their heroine's journey is, doesn't have to be sexual abuse, but whatever the story is that's binding them, that is keeping them in the victim. And then how do they kind of journey through that into using that as their greatest source of power, and channeling that into, what they're here to do in the world. So the sex priestess to me is really the path of liberation and taking our greatest pain and turning it into our power.
And I know I've seen you speak about this before, and I think the first time I started reading about this kind of, or the first time this kind of came into my awareness was when I read Mama Gina's book Pussy, and she spoke about these, in these ancient cultures where, pussy and, a woman's eroticism was not only revered, but it was like a sacred, necessary part of culture. And I really see you and your work really like re-anchoring that, or that part of the work you do, really re-anchoring that like reverence for eroticism and reverence for the gifts that an erotic woman can not only bring herself, but a man, and like how an erotic woman or an erotically alive woman can initiate a man, but also what she can bring to the culture as well. I would love to hear more about that, especially around what an erotically alive woman, like how she can initiate a man and how that's like a very ancient practice.
Yeah. I mean, I opened up the book with a memory. Like I had memories for so long around this, I don't know if it was past life. It probably was past life memories of, just like women dancing in temples. And it was this like beautiful, just like high class, like luxurious space where men and women would actually come and receive like the initiations of the Shakti, of the Kundalini, of this life force energy that's moving through a woman when she's dancing in her Eros. And so because she's running that erotic energy through her body in her temple dance, the viewer also gets like an activation by just being in that energy. And I just have so many memories of this, and that's a huge part of my work, is helping women remember the sacredness and the absolute like innocence of this erotic energy. There's nothing like sinister about it. It's like pure life force energy that just wants to move through us and dance through us. And so, I see like today, the modern day strip clubs is just the kind of, it's like the yearning for that frequency, what once was, where women were revered and, just like moving a transmission of Shakti through her body. And for those who witness, just to be in absolute awe and moment of bliss, just by like being captured by her erotic beauty. So it's such a big part of, like, a big essence of what I teach. And I love creating spaces like that. A lot of my like, in-person work is centered around that, like the dance, the movement, being witnessed, and running erotic energy with other women. So important for us to do. Yeah.
And I love that you just said there's like nothing sinister about that, because like as someone who, you know, grew up with a lot of sexual shame, 10 years ago, if I would have witnessed a woman running erotic energy through her own body or running erotic energy with another woman, like I would have judged the shit out of that. I would have, you know, they're slutty women. That's wrong. I would have had a lot of fear and judgment around that. And even women that moved their bodies in certain ways, like I had judgment around that. And I remember the first time, like a big piece of my sexual awakening was when I was in a deep plant medicine ceremony. And it was like the medicine just started to move my body. Like now I look back and I'm like, that was like a Kundalini awakening for me. But the medicine was just like moving my hips and circling me in ways my body had never moved. And I remember my eyes were closed most of the time. I was like on the ground, like on all fours, and then standing in all these different positions. And I remember clearly feeling like, oh, I've never felt so at home in my body. Like all these shapes and postures and ways that I used to judge women for moving, I'm moving in that way right now. And I've never felt more alive and more at home in my body. And in that instant, it just really like eradicated the story of like, if a woman moves her body like that, she is, like we we're talking about, you know, even Lilith, she's a Lilith now. She's the whore now, right? And she can never return. She can never be the good girl again. And that was, and I just wanted to really point out that you said that there's nothing. And I think a woman has to have an embodied experience of that. And I'd love to hear from you in that to almost like eradicate the energy or start to shift those stories that a lot of us carry around. It's wrong. Oh my gosh, I'm a bad girl if I move like this, or I feel this, or I express in this way.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so deep. And it's in the body, stored in the body. That's so you start to, you know, move yourself in a non-linear way, even like just swirling hips, you know, that's, yeah, I've had not so much, but some women who come to some of my spaces, even that, like just doing like circular movements, it brings up stuff for them, you know. And it's because it's moving so much shame, guilt, fear that gets stored literally in the hips, in the womb, in the buttocks, like all the lower centers in the yoni. So it can be really uncomfortable when you start to move yourself in those, like you shared your experience, in those non-linear ways, and it starts to shake up what's been, you know, dormant there, those emotions. So yeah, it's and it's interesting that like the shaming of others. So this is such a core piece and something that I've always used as an indicator on my journey. Like whatever I'm judging outside of myself, we can either turn away from that and judge it and just like demonize it, or see that as, wow, okay, that's like showing me something that I'm judging within myself. And the wisest thing is to move towards that and get curious. Like, doesn't mean you have to then go and like become that, but get curious, because that's an indication of your dark feminine, the shadow, like whatever you've exiled, whatever's been oppressed for so long, what you're seeing outside of you, yeah, is usually the gateway in. And that like more sexually expressed woman, you know, is one of the biggest demonized archetypes in society. So
Completely.
It's a collective shadow, really.
I'm guessing you have a lot of women that come into your world and then go, I was super triggered by you and now I want to learn from you.
Yes. Yeah.
I love it.
So
Uh-huh.
even men, like men tell me all the time, I can't follow you, but then I kept looking at your page. I was like confused, and it's wild.
Okay, I was going to go in another direction, but now I want to go in that direction. Tell us more about your work with men.
I mean, yeah, it's shifted over the years, you know, like I started actually maybe like 10 years ago. I actually started working mainly with men in the
Okay.
realms of sexuality. I was doing a lot of work with this who I see as actually this woman. She was like a woman in Australia who was I feel like she initiated me into the dark feminine. She was 10 years older than me, and she was kind of like really that core. She was like a 5 planets in Scorpio, like just fucking like dark femme embodied. And she kind of like was like guiding me into this work with men, and specifically like the tantric embodiment, tantric initiations for men. So I started working with men in that realm, and I felt like this like strong, and I write about it in my book, like this, like it was coming through me, like I felt like I wanted to either, and it was either stripping that I felt I wanted to do, or this tantric body work. And the tantric body work, just it was flowing way more easily for me. So and I had the mentor, so I started with men in that space, so taking men on these journeys like they would back in the day, like the tantric priestesses, where the men would come to a woman and actually spend an extended period of time, you know, often up to 1 year, training with a woman, learning how to actually activate the lover archetype. And it had nothing to do with sex or sexual energy until usually a year after he'd been working with the tantric priestess.
Wow.
So I wanted to really, yeah. And so when I learned about this, like that also resonated in my being. I was like, I want to work with men in this way. I'm not just offering like this, you know, like lusty, lower level, like lingam massage type sessions. It was like, no, I'm going to train them in the arts, like how to meditate, how to be present with a woman, how to um like communicate with a woman, how to, you know, then start to work with like their emotional bodies and clearing a lot of their stuff that's inside of them. So we did all this preparation work, and maybe after 6 months, we would run sexual energy. Like I would guide them through, like I would guide them. It wasn't like a sexual exchange, but, you know, breathing practices and moving energy through their body and learning how to like sublimate their sexual energy. So that was really powerful. And that was honestly a big part of my dark feminine initiation, to be honest, because it was like that archetype of like the sacred prostitute almost, you know, like not that I was having sex with men, but it was sexual energy was present and it was very intimate spaces. That was a huge part of me that I knew I had to explore and reclaim, but in my way, in the way that was like really honoring and bringing in the traditions, the tantric tradition. So that was huge. And then I kind of did that for maybe 2 years, and then I kind of just eased out naturally. Like I got into a relationship and just felt like I didn't want to do that work anymore with men. I wanted to focus on just my partnership at the time. And so, yeah, and then now I just work more with men online and I don't do any like hands-on or in-person stuff really at all anymore. It's just more like ship and yeah, these spaces.
I love that. Would you say there's a hunger in the men in your world or the men that you've worked with, like a hunger to understand how to be with a woman? Like I love that you said that you were like teaching them how to slow down and be with a woman and be present with a woman's body. Would you say there's like a hunger in many men to be initiated into that and to understand more about that?
Yeah, for sure. Like I have so many men who follow me and, you know, watch all my stories, and I'll see them like, you know, popping up, and I'll look on their page and I see they're in relationships, and I'll actually ask them, you know, I actually just straight out, I'm like, why are you following me and why are you watching my stuff? I'm just curious. And they say, I want to learn how to understand my wife more and how to please her more.
Love it.
So, but they're still, you know, it's like the male ego. There's like a lot of shame around that. It's like, oh, they don't even want to admit, like, they don't, it's often hard to get them across the line into coaching, because then that's really solidifies that they've can't fuck their wife, basically, so or can't please their wife. So, but they're like curious and learning in little ways. But yeah. I mean, I've run a lot of group programs for men, and the men do show up in those spaces, but it's like less than women. It's like they have to get to that. I feel the men have to get to that breaking point where the woman often leaves them. And then they're like, fuck, I need to do something about this. And then they come to a tantrika, whereas they should have come like 5 years ago, and then they probably would still be together.
That's so interesting, because like my husband Jacob does a lot of work with men, and we often reflect on that. Like a lot of men that step into, men's work, sometimes it is the catalyst of like a breaking point, or oftentimes it is the catalyst of a breaking point, like a divorce, a relationship breakdown, something like that is guiding them into the work where, I feel like a lot of the time women are just like, I want more pleasure, more of things. I don't necessarily see that as much. So that's interesting. You witness that in your work too.
Yeah. And I feel like when it comes to this aspect of like the men's work, like the sexuality and how to be with a woman, like they have to learn that from a woman.
Yeah.
Just like I've had many male mentors over the years. Like actually most of my mentors have been men, and it's been for that reason, to understand men more and heal with the masculine. So for men to do that work, and it's so much harder, I feel, for a man to like let their ego aside and listen to a man tell them how to be a good lover. It's like, it's just the male ego. Like it's harder for that to get through. Whereas like when a woman's teaching this, it's less of that defensiveness.
Totally. Yeah. And then naturally, if like, a man's in a heterosexual relationship, it would usually be a woman expressing her desires and expressing, how she wants to be touched and how she wants it to unfold. So yeah, it makes sense that there's like a deeper receivership in that space with a woman.
Yeah, sure.
There was something I wanted to ask you before I got sidetracked, because I wanted to hear about your work with men. That was it. We were speaking about that erotic energy not being sinister, and then I wanted to almost like take it to the next level and talk about not only is that erotic energy not sinister, but it's also a portal to, God, goddess, spirit. And for me, that's my understanding in the tantric work that I've done and the lineage that I've worked with, that it's like Tantra is like everything is a portal to God. Everything is a portal to goddess. So you can find it, in your pussy, in erotic energy, in, sexual experiences. So I'd love to hear more about how that informs your work, what your experience of that has been, how you teach that.
Yeah, I mean, it really is this, is that like Sex to Super Consciousness, that book by Osho? Like well, I feel that is the tantric path is really working with our like most primal aspect of our being, like the root chakra, like the primal, the mud, the the sex, the blood, like all the primal aspects of our being, and learning how to unlock that force, that sexual force within us. And because it's fire energy, we have to learn how to channel it through our body, and we have to learn how to tame it. Otherwise, once we unlock this sexual energy, if we don't know how to channel it and redirect it, it literally can burn us. And it often does. That's why so many couples, when they have this like intense sexual attraction at the root chakra, it starts at the root, like the turn on, and it just kind of explodes there and stays there. It stays in the root chakra. It stays in the sacral. It's not moving through up into the higher centers. And so if that sexual energy is just staying in the lower centers, it's going to burn up against all of the unresolved stuff there, all your childhood wounding, all your traumas. And that's where, you have this, what we like to call twin flames like these trauma bonds. It's essentially that. It's like your sexual energy is just exploding and burning the two of you, and you don't know how to transmute it into higher states of consciousness. So we really have to learn how to not just activate our eros and our sexual energy, but then learn how to move it up into, beyond just the sacral and then the solar plex, then it comes up into our power center. This is where it often gets stuck, I think, for most people and most couples, is like in the power center, the solar plex. And that's, where we have the power dynamics playing out. And it's just kind of this battle of the sexes. So we need to be able to move it up then into the heart space. And then once we move it up into the heart, like the sexual energy we can really transmute it up into the crown and the third eye. And that's where we experience, the sex going from just like primal fucking into transcendental, like altered states of consciousness. But we have to start in the primal fucking. We can't deny that. Like, I feel there's a lot of, in the tantric space, it can be like all about, oh, let's just go straight into like the heart, like long, slow, deep, and then move it up. Whereas I'm really about the full spectrum, like let's start at the primal. We have to meet there, but we've got to know how to then move it up into that transcendental states of consciousness. And when we can start from the root, it's a really powerful, like catapulting place to blast it up. And that's the whole point, I feel, of sex is to reach higher states of consciousness and transmute it through us so we can unlock, like our fullest potential as a human. And it's that fire that we need, like the erotic fire that does that. So we go from primal to divine, and like nothing is denied in that journey. Everything's embraced along the way.
I love that. Nothing is denied. Yes. And when you say moving that energy from the primal to the divine, is that something you suggest an individual does? Like, if it's a woman, is she doing that in her own practice, in her own body? Or is that something she can do in partnership? I'd love to hear, like, your perspective on that, or how you teach that.
Yeah, I feel as though like it's like both have to really be practicing in a way, but like, for example, if the man's if he doesn't know how to sublimate his sexual energy, it's just going to come out like an ejaculation, and then so it hasn't moved up through his body at all. So he's got to be doing his own practices of learning how to sublimate. And then for those,
just for those who don't know what sublimate is, can you express what that means for a man?
Yeah. So instead of when he orgasms, instead of ejaculating, it's like an injaculation. So the energy moves, instead of out, it moves up through the body. So there's still an orgasm happening, but it is like internal and moves up through his body, up his spine, as opposed to just straight out in the form of the pump. So the man needs to be able to do that, and that's his own journey. He has to have his own practices. There's so many books around this and resources out there now for that. And then I feel for the woman, it's really our work, I feel, is more emotional sublimation. And this is something, it's like we're not sublimating, because when we orgasm, it's always internal and it always is moving through us.
Yeah.
We never lose energy when we orgasm. We forever gain energy. But if we don't know how to sublimate our emotions, our emotional energy, then it's going to get stuck in our sacral, our solar plex. So we need to, if we're feeling whatever we're feeling through the lovemaking, we need to bring that into the space and feel it, emote it. Like, don't be afraid to make sound and cry or scream, like whatever wants to move through you. It's a full cathartic process, So bring your full expression, and obviously you can do that in your own space before bringing it to your partner. But it's really powerful when you can have that stimulation.
I love that you said before about I don't remember the exact words you used, but you said something about denying nothing along the way. And I think that is, yeah, I've never heard someone talk about that, like that emotional sublimation in that way, but it's so true. Like when a woman learns, and this has been in my own practice and what I teach women, to not see sex as just a place she can experience pleasure, but a space she can experience it all, like, and that it's that when she gives herself permission to express and embody it all along that way, like you said, not denying anything that arises in her body, and also seeing whatever arises in her body as the doorway to more pleasure, to more ecstatic states, to more liberation. Like that is everything. That is everything.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like that's like so much of my experience is like having full on, I feel it's like heartgasms and then like crygasms. Like I feel as though the energy moves up into my heart and it like explodes and it's so overwhelming. And then I feel it comes out through my eyes, like it's ejaculating through my eyes.
Love that.
And I'm like,
love crying ejaculation.
It's a new squirting technique.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, I think there is such a beauty in, and I think what a really, and you know, this, we can come full circle in this conversation too around like discernment and the dark feminine, because I think for a woman can experience that by herself in her own self-pleasure and erotic practice. But if she's in a heterosexual relationship with a man, like safety is so integral to that, to her being able to feel safe enough to relax into the fullness of her expression and to emote and to express and embody all that wants to come through. And I think that is just like bringing that full circle. Like that is where the dark feminine is in service to her and her like experiences of deep surrender, because if she's discerning enough to choose a man, you know, that's able to hold that safety, you know, and that deep presence for her body to go to that place, that's everything. That makes such a fucking difference. It makes all the fucking difference.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So important.
Ah. Okay, my love, I fucking loved this conversation. Is there anything else you'd love to offer to the space? I'm gonna ask you in a moment to share where everyone can find you or more about your book. But is there any other pieces that you'd love to bring or offer to the space?
I mean, just really like, you know, for the people that are listening, you know, that this is all new. I think just starting with that inquiry, you know, around like what are some of these women that you judge or like qualities that you judge in others, and just starting there and getting curious and seeing that as an opportunity to grow, you know. Nice, and like push that person away, because in my experience, like every time that I've tried to run away from things that triggered me, like it just chased after me. Like it just finds you somehow, and it always does. So don't be afraid. It's the gateway to your power, essentially.
Yes. I just bringing it back to something you said earlier around like a lot of the women that come to you have been in long-term relationships or marriages and are like, oh, like, you know, aching for something and wanting to bring that eroticism online. And I truly see that. It's like, I feel like a woman will go through life, it's like starving if she never truly meets or allows that dark feminine to come through. It's like that feeds us. Like that truly feeds us. And we go through life, if we haven't connected to that part, it's like we're hungry. And I'm sure you've seen, I'm sure maybe I've experienced this in my own life, and I see this with other women. It's like we're hungry, but we don't realize that's what we're hungry for. So we're like trying to, you know, get the relationship, get the thing, because we're trying to fill that space where really it's ourselves we're fucking hungry for. We're hungry for that power that you said, that activation of our full expression.
Yes. Yeah. yeah, even for myself personally, when I start to feel like, a bit stagnant, I just tap back into my dark feminine and life just gets like activated again and just my creative juices get unlocked again and just everything just starts flowing again. It's because the sexual energy is stagnant. The emotional energy gets stagnant and creative energy gets stagnant. So it's really the gateway in.
Mm. And for a woman, I love what you just offered up, that like inquiry, but for a woman that hasn't maybe touched the depths of her dark feminine, or maybe even like any part of her eroticism or that sex priestess kind of archetype, is there a practice that you would suggest that woman kind of begins to lean into, like so that she can begin to, feel that or welcome that in her body?
Yeah, I would start with erotic dancing in front of a mirror for yourself. So I've got some epic playlists. Unleash Your Dark Feminine is one of them. And, even making your own playlists of songs that really take you into that archetype and dancing for yourself in front of a mirror in a way that is sensual, like fluid, hip swirling, undulating, maybe, on the ground. Like it's not choreographed, it's not routine at all. It's just for you. Like you're not performing for anyone, you're just in your own space. Like that's such a good way to start. I mean, I do that every day. Like I start every morning with at least one song just to really like move the energy and just feel, the energy moving. Yeah.
Love it.
It's essential.
And my love, where can everyone find you? Where's the best place to find you online? And have you got anything? Tell us where to find the book as well, and anything you've got coming up as ways, women or the men listening can be in your world.
Yeah, so you can get the book Sex Priestess on Amazon, and it's also on my website, tantricalchemy.net. And I have a 3-day portal virtual temple coming up on June 3, 4, 5. It's called Erotic Pulse. So that's really for women who are, just wanting to tap back into the erotic pulse and everything we've been talking about today. Actually, we're going to be covering a lot of, unleashing that erotic energy through your body, feeling safe in your body, getting clear on your desires and turn-ons. So that's happening in a week.
Beautiful. And where can people find you on social media? Tantric Alchemy
Official.
Tantric Alchemy Official. Amazing. And all of this will be in the show notes, everyone. But if you're more of an audio person that wants to like type it into Instagram immediately, that's where you can find Nadine. Thank you, Nadine. This has been so epic. And I'm just so grateful for you and just the perspective you hold and what you embody in this work and in this industry. So thank you. Thank you for all you do.
Thanks for having me.